So it works. Good morning to everybody. I would like to welcome you to this session on simplification. It looks like it's overcrowded. So there are many people, they want to know what we can do more for you to simplify your life and to make easier your access to our funding and our program. So thank you for such an interest in participating to our event. And thank you for participating to the R&I Days, the first R&I Days that we have organized the last years that I remember this program. I hope that for those that they have been here yesterday, you enjoyed the day, and I hope that today you will be happy with this event. My name is Anna Panagopoulou. I'm the director of the Common Implementation Center in DG Research and Innovation, and my main duty, quickly I can say, is to simplify really your lives and to make access to the program easier. So I would like, before I introduce the panelists, to explain a little bit the framework that we are operating the last years. As you know, there is a proposal on the table, the Horizon Europe proposal. Many of you have seen it. We have an agreement with the Council and the Parliament. And what we have decided this time is to start thinking about the real implementation, the project lifecycle, the access to the funding already now. Not to wait the finalization of the legislative process, but we have to think about it now. And this is why we launched in public consultation the implementation strategy. So what we want to achieve actually is at the end of the year to have a paper which will enable us to take the next steps on how exactly we put in place an implementation framework for Horizon Europe. A framework which is simpler than what you had already in Horizon 2020, a framework which will incorporate already your suggestions and your proposals. And this is the reason that we have R&I Days, and this is the reason that we have this session today, to listen to you, to hear you, and also to share the experience from our guests here, our panelists, that they have already worked or analyzed our program, and they can share with you your views. So, how we are going to work today? I'm going to give the floor to the speakers, and then what you can use is the Slido. There will be a tool, which is an online tool, that you can use to send your questions online. Peter, yes. I give you the floor to explain Slido.
Okay, so does it? Oh. Does it? Yes. So I think this is an example of simplicity, this Slido. So you just go to this website, www.slido.com, and then you enter the code that is shown here, R900, and then you still have to choose our meeting room. Our meeting room is called Montalcini. And once you did this, you can start typing questions and your name, and you can send these questions, and they will then appear on the screen. If you have the same question as somebody else who has already asked the question, please don't ask it again, but like the question of the other one. And then we will start replying to the questions in the order of likes. That's it.
So, So digital transformation is not only in the implementation of our program, but is in the interaction with you. Give me now 1 minute to introduce our speakers, our panelists. To start with Alex Brennimeyer. Mr. Brennimeyer, he is the member of the European Court of Auditors, and he's with us today because he knows really very well the program. And he has been the one behind a special report of the Court of Auditors on simplification. So, Alex, thank you very much for accepting this invitation. Rosa Menendez is the president of the Spanish National Research Council. Thank you, Rosa, for being with us today. And we have a short chat with Rosa before, and she explained to us her experience with research from both sides. As the ministry, but also at the same time as evaluator, as looking at our proposal. So she really has a lot of experience of what it means research funding and how we can make it even better. Then Wilfried Kraus is the Deputy Director General of the European Cooperation, Education and Research. And apart from that, Wilfried, he has a lot of experience working with the institutions, being in Brussels for many, many, many years. So I'm happy also to have Wilfried with us to share his experience and his visions for the future. And finally, Olivier Valbroek, apart from being an excellent colleague, we have an excellent collaboration with Olivier. He's the director of the Central Financial Services in DG Budget in Commission. And he, I would say, at corporate level, is the one who is advocating for simplification across the MFF. Thank you, Olivier, for being with us today. So let's start, first of all, with the first questions to our panelists, and I will ask Alex to share with us his experience on the simplification report of the Court of Auditors. So, yes, we did better than in the past, if you compare FP7 and Horizon 20, but what you can tell us more? What we can do more? Where we have to focus?
Okay, thank you. I'm very happy to be in this room. I've been an academic in the sense that I try to understand also what is in your minds, and that's also the approach of the Court of Auditors. Auditing is listening, and we have listened very carefully to the research field. What are the problems with complexity and simplification? My start of the audit was quite simple. I asked the Director General, please send me the complete legislation on Horizon 2020. And then he refused to do so. He said, it's useless. It's incomprehensible. It's too huge. It will take too much time. So please come to my office and then we will meet. And I think that was a good start of the audit. Secondly, when we started our audit, we said we are auditing a strong system. The system of Horizon 2020 is a very strong system, and if we audit it, we do not want to get into the nitty-gritty in the small issues. It should be focusing on important main issues. If we observe the organization of Horizon 2020, 8 commission directorates, 4 executive agencies, 7 joint undertakings, etc., it's huge. It's extremely complex, not only the legislation, but also the execution of it. The Commission organized a common support center, which is exemplary, I believe, for future cooperation here in Brussels and being effective in implementing programs like Horizon 2020, the Common Support Center, and everybody acknowledges that DG RTD has made great efforts in simplification. On the other hand, there are still issues which remain problematic. For instance, the annotated grant agreement, it's 846 pages. And maybe specialists from research institutes or universities can swallow 846 pages. But if it comes, for instance, to SMEs, how is their entry to the information on Horizon 2020? So that's problematic. At the end of the day, we concluded to 2 important issues. The first one is interface, the connection between the research field and the administration in all stadia in the application till the audit at the end. How are the interfaces facilitating the process in the sense that it should not burden research and innovation? A second important issue in our audit appeared to be stability. Professionals are working with systems, and if the systems change over time very frequently and there is no clarity about these changes, this is a pitfall in the sense that with good intentions you improve the system, but it destabilizes the daily practice in managing research programs. So on the one hand, working on the complexity of research funding, it's important to reflect what kind of interfaces are helpful, a common support center, etc. The portal might be helpful, but maybe it can be further improved on basis of the feedback of all of you. And secondly, the tension between stability of the system and, on the other hand, frequent improvement of the system. Thank you.
Thank you, Alex, very much. And indeed, the input from the Court of Auditor came at the right moment when we started to finalize the legislative process, but at the same time, we were reflecting on the future interfaces. And talking about the interfaces, indeed, at the end, what matters is not the legal basis, but how you communicate this legal basis in the simple way to the beneficiaries and to the applicants. So the next question is for you, Rosa. What do you think we can do to help applicants, indeed, and beneficiaries to attract smaller actors and newcomers by developing or improving this communication and interfaces with them?
Okay, thank you, Anna. Good morning, everybody. First, to thank for giving me the opportunity to be this morning with all of you. The Spanish National Research Council, CSIC, participates in the European Union Research and Innovation Framework programs since the very beginning. So we have learned along the way with the difficulties, with the lack of support tools. Looking at this experience in a positive way, from a positive side, lessons learned have led us, the SIC, to create a dedicated structure to support our scientists in their relationships with the research framework programs. I am honestly proud of being pioneers in this field, and today our organization is, I consider, a highly trained professional team, and we have specialized people in the different administrative, legal, and financial matters, including the implementation of framework programs. In this sense, and applied to all participants, the Common Support Center, created in 2014 to solve the multiple fragmentation existed under FP7, has done an excellent job so far. As the European Court of Auditors reports shows, some uncertainties still persist as regard of the consistent application and interpretation of the European Union rules, and that affects the quality of the advice received by participants and beneficiaries. This is particularly important in the case of proposals submitted by entities which operational scale is small or newcomers without experience in the preparation or implementation of proposals under the European Union framework programs. With that in mind, and the significant improvement in the centralized administrative management obtained by the Common Support Center, in my opinion, the communication process has to be rationalized, and for instance, the research inquiry services should be incorporated into the Common Support Center structure. I believe it is very difficult to be consistent in the legal or financial advice if the research inquiry service is supported by 36 help desks, as the European Court of Auditors report states, even with the verification of quality carried out by the Research Executive Agency. In addition, the quality of the advice and the general communication is crucial, the interfaces. But it is also essential that those receiving the information trust in the source. In other words, there are multiple channels, as you well know, of information for people interested in participating in the framework programs, but there should be a European Union centralized legal channel where the information and help provided can be considered reliable. The participant portal, now the funding and tender opportunities, is an essential management tool and the one-stop shop to everything related to the framework program. As such, must be in permanent evolution, introducing as many improvements as possible. The national contact point, the NCPs, are the first line of support in our opinion, funded by organizations and member states, facilitating the participation in the framework programs and the practical application of the legal rules. They are essential. They are essential contributors to the successful implementation and communication of the framework programs. I can say that in Spain we have an excellent network of NCPs, of which all Spanish participants are very proud of. But as excellent as they cannot perform their duties appropriately if, for instance, they don't get the information on updates or crucial decisions taken by the Commission that could affect to hundreds of their clients with sufficient notice. The Commission should not lose the added value of the NCPs in their search of simplification, as included in the European Court Auditor's recommendations. The Commission must work with Member States to improve the methodological and technical guidance provided to NCPs. I would add that national contact point networks must be maintained and reinforced, given the added value they have for national actors. Horizon 2020 events, Info Days, in Brussels, the Coordinators Day, National Info Days, and so on, are also excellent ways to communicate with stakeholders, explaining the rules and procedures of the program and facilitating networking. The dynamics of these events has been adapted to the availability of the new information technology tools that allow to reach a wider audience. Just to finish, to sum up, the improvements implemented by the European Commission are, in our opinion, in the right direction, and completely centralized help desk reinforced by national contact point networks, the continuous update of the funding and tender opportunities portal, and the improvement in legal certainty provided by the legal documents will facilitate the communication and participation in the upcoming framework program to all actors.
Thank you, Rosa. Thank you for this very comprehensive feedback. Indeed, there are different ways to interface, and you named them. I don't want to repeat them. We have to do something more to enhance these interfaces. Outreach, actually, to the member states is one of the priorities of the DG Research and Innovation, and we have started in this framework of consultation to go ourselves to the member states and to receive and ask for their feedback in view of developing the new implementation framework. Winfried, stability versus evolution. Evolution versus stability. That was one of the key recommendations also of the Court of Auditors. What is the balance? What we should do, in your opinion?
This is an interesting question. Thank you. Good morning, everybody. I am working on the European level more or less than 20 years. I started my work in Brussels in 1999, building up the liaison office of the German Center for Aeronautics and Space, and afterwards the liaison office of Helmholtz Association. And our job only was to advise proposals from Helmholtz Association centers in these procedures. And I started my work by writing my proposals myself, because it's not possible to consult people without having the knowledge how to write a proposal yourself. And since this time, I can say that the Commission, and in particular the advisor, did a very good job for simplification. That was the time of Commissioner Cresson, and then a lot of controls, a lot of bureaucracy, a lot of red tape came up. And it was really a strange situation. And till this 20 years, we tried to do our very best to make it much simpler. For example, the two-stage approach procedure is a very important one, because you have to think about money. If you would like to take part in a project, and in particular in a smaller project, and coordinate only the application, you have to spend 5 to 10,000 euro by yourself. And if you're speaking in terms of success rates, if it's only 5%, you're wasting a lot of money, sometimes 30% of the amount of the call, only by preparation. And therefore it has to be simple. Not only simple to be successful, it has to be simple to save money, to be clear. And therefore I'm very happy that we have this two-stage approach, but it has to be more. And we have to have a limited number of paper, only maybe 50 or 40 pages. This I think is an important one. Every time we have problems with costs. I think to have lump sums is a good instrument and the right step in the right direction, and we will have our experience. And I'm happy that we have this pilot phase in order to know whether we have other problems. It emerged a little bit that, in particular, the people in the administration of the research centers on universities have the fear that the money they got will not be sufficient to cover all the costs, and then internally, it's a problem for the researchers to convince their people at home, not people in the European Commission. We have to have an eye on it, but I think this problem should be solved as well. The flat rates as well were a good thing, to cover the overhead costs and so on. But the costs are still the main problem, seems to be in the application process. And one problem seems to be that the accounting rules of the beneficiaries are very different, and that the conditions of the European Commission don't really reflect the accounting system. And on this issue, I think we all have to work. On the other hand, and I think I'm very much in line with Alex, it's taxpayers' money. We have to deal carefully with it. And simplification could not sound that don't ask for the money. No. We have to know what we are doing with the money, and it has to be spent in the way we decided to do so. Therefore, I think a lot of simplifications are on the way, but the most important thing is simplification as such is not a value. Simplification has to contribute to a fair and competitive procedure that people are able to have their results and success in time with limited money. This should be the approach of all simplification. But have the look back the last 20 years, the European Union and all the people working on this issue are doing a very good job. There is space for improvements, but less and less. And to answer your question, yes, we need continuity. I'm with you. I was part of a panel 10 years ago to improve the rules of participation. And the conclusion was only minor changes, because it's a very good instrument, very good applicable, with a lot of experience. And what I learned when I consult people and proposers, to be successful in a European call is a learning process. You have to learn to write proposals. And if you want to have money, you have to learn it. This is a rule. And therefore, nobody can say, okay, try it. No, you have to learn it. You have to work on it. And you have to be precise. But the focus of all our efforts should not be to be formally perfect, to have very good, excellent, creative, and innovative projects. This should be the approach, and the only approach. And simplification is only one aspect which can contribute to this approach. Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much, Winfried, and thank you for sharing all your experience. Yes, simplification is an element, and the reason for spending money is to deliver impact. So, my question goes now to Olivier. Olivier is the one who really has to follow and to ensure that the money are rightly spent for the good reason and according to the rules. And yes, the rules of participation were there for many years, but now they have to align to the single set of rules, which is the new financial regulation. And it is now our new Bible, which is complementary to the rules, or the rules are complementary to the Bible. Take it as you wish. So, Olivier, how we can collaborate together, what we can contribute as a research and innovation framework to the overall simplification and research in the Commission, and to deliver impact of our funding.
Thank you, and I'm very glad to be here with you, because I've been working for the last years intensively on simplifying EU rules. And I hear very loudly what colleagues have said this morning about the need for stability and continuity. But when things have evolved in such a way that we have a huge and complex amount of rules we need to simplify. And this is what we have done and proposed in 2016 with the adoption of the new financial regulation in 2018, which is for the first time a shorter and a single rule book. So I want to emphasize that we have cut 1/4 of the length of the rules. This is a huge effort on the side of the Commission, and it has been well understood supported by the Court of Auditors and supported and adopted by Council and Parliament. Now, that was not enough, of course, because we have to look and to implement, to unfold this simplification in the sectoral legal basis. And this is what the Horizon Europe program does, and I'm very happy to show in a minute how it actually builds and uses all the potentialities that we have adopted as part of the general financial rules. So let's look at these main simplifications. They concern first the beginning of the program, the end of the program, and the implementation phase. At the beginning, we have set out a very simple principle. You should ask the same information only once. And the Commission and all its executive agencies should reuse it to the maximum extent possible. This is fully implemented by the participant portal and by the electronic management of the grants. Now, looking at the end of the process, the single audit approach, or the cross-reliance of audits, we should audit only once the same euro. We should not check it several times. And so whenever there is a need to do a further audit, it should cross-rely on the previous one. And this is what is also proposed by the Horizon Europe structure, to the extent that we will rely more on the audit of systems of the beneficiaries, and also for the number of cases of joint funding under centrally managed programs. Now let's look at the key phases, which is implementation and getting paid for what you have done. There we have, and fully in line with Anna, we want to promote a change of culture. We want to promote the focus on the results, on the main outcome, rather than on checking bills. Why? Because year after year we are faced with the same reality. Reimbursing actual costs is complex, it is burdensome, and it is error-prone. So we must find a way out of this. And we have proposed two main changes in that context. The first one is to focus on the results, getting paid against results, getting paid for predetermined milestones. And researchers are familiar with this, with the incentive prices, or the Horizon Europe prices, which are indeed the prime example of getting paid against results. And then there is the major development, which I want to dwell on this morning, is the single lump sum, which allows the researcher to be paid for an amount which is either fixed by the Commission or by the researcher and evaluated by experts on the basis of a methodology decided by the Commission. This is really essential, and I would strongly plead, as the Court of Auditors did in its opinion to our proposals, for a maximum use of this new potentiality. It allows the researcher to focus on the results, on the outcome, and not to spend time on administration and checking bills and ex post audits. So I know this is not an easy thing. The discussions are ongoing. We have pilot ongoing since 2018. And my plea this morning is that we continue to look together how we can better tailor the use of such lump sums to the specific needs of the research area. Then it's also a pleasure for me to be here, because the research community in the Commission is one of the best organized one, with a common governance, and Anna is part of it with its key services. And it's not only common audit in the future, it will also be common planning, programming, and implementation. It's really an advanced stage. And as another example of this common framework is the new model agreement, which will encapsulate all these novelties, and which is actually used as a basis for a new corporate model agreement Commission-wide, which would further facilitate the combination of funding. Thank you, Anna.
Thank you, Olivier. Thank you to everybody. So, shall we go to the Slido questions? And what we have said, maybe we have started with those that they have most likes. And surprise, not surprise, is the one with the most likes, the one on the ERC projects. that the audience believe that the way that they are implementing is much easier, and whether the way that ERC projects are implemented could be taken on board in Horizon Europe practices. But before I turn to my panelists, can I ask one of those people that they have voted for this question some concrete examples in which sense ERC is much easier, so that we can also enable the panelists to reply on their views? Who would like to take the floor? I have the microphone here for you. Somebody? One proposal? Concrete?
Three.
Nobody? But share your experience.
Elena.
Who would like to share a good
Sí,
experience?
volunteers.
I don't belong to the question.
Okay.
It's not, I didn't put the question.
No, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter.
The reporting
Speak in the microphone.
Yeah.
the reporting period is longer in ERC. So it says that Commission trusts a little bit better ERC beneficiaries than, project, in other pillars. So
Okay.
the reporting period is better. And it's true that ERC, the executive agency, is somewhat a little bit much more flexible than the rest of the Commission. Flexibility is a standard for ERC, for the executive agency of ERC.
Okay, thank
This
you.
is my opinion.
Okay. Thank you very much. Who would like to reply to this question? Whether, I'll reformulate it, because it looks like a question addressed to the Commission, and I would reformulate it. Whether we think that practices that they have been implemented in the ERC could be eventually considered across the border. So I don't know. Yes, I guess to Winfried.
I don't know the conditions very precisely that I'm able to compare it concretely, but we have to make clear that we have different situations, because ERC funding is simpler because there are limited number of people in the game, sometimes only one person or smaller groups. If I'm speaking about collaborative research, it could be 20, 40, 50 collaborative parties in such a corporation. Therefore, it's much more complex and much more complicated. And it's mostly, or in a lot of cases, driven by innovation or business and so on. And we have to cover additionally other interests, intellectual property rights, the knowledge of the companies and so on to deal with. And therefore, it's more complex. But we should pick up the question, and if I'm in your role, I would like to compare the conditions, whether you can transform some of these aspects from ERC to the other things, knowing that it is really different, but looking for comparable things to improve as well the situation in the other part of collaborative research.
Okay, thank you very much indeed. And this is what we'll try to do also internally in the Commission, to analyze the different practices across the Commission program, and then to see how we can further align or take the best practices and to apply them in other parts of the program. And would you like to say no? And somebody else would like to address this question? I don't know, Olivier, from the MFF overall perspective?
Maybe one point. I'm struck by the insistence on legal certainty for the researcher, and I think it's key. And this is precisely what the ex-ante approval of the lump sum system, the single lump sum, would provide. A clear framework for the research to focus on the results instead of focusing on administration, and shifting this ex-ante stress of the ex post audits to the ex-ante period.
Okay. Thank you very much. So I'll go to the second question, and probably I will address it to Rosa, who said she used to be an evaluator. So as an evaluator, it is frustrating to see that without negotiations... Sorry. Huh? Yes. So I'll give you the box. So you...
Out of the box.
I am not going to throw it away, yeah? So we have to be careful. So, opla, I throw it.
Hi, Elina, you hear me? Elina Humala from University of Jyväskylä, Finland. We love ERC projects. I think the key there is that the trust, which was already mentioned, and of course they are less complex. But it is also, in my point of view, the principle behind that you do not know what you will achieve in the end. It's the freedom for the researcher. And in a way, I then disagree with the lump sum kind of principle, because pricing, first of all, is always difficult. It's just transposing the discussion to different level. Pricing is always difficult. And how can we always promise a certain result?
Yeah.
And I think the ERC there is, because it allows you to take high risk and then try to solve the problem the best way when you encounter them. And I don't think lump sum kind of, not necessarily, I'm not convinced yet. I'm a skeptic. I need more evidence. Thank you.
Thank you. Alex?
Yeah,
Yes.
maybe I can respond to that, and maybe the question is a more general one, and it's the following. The improvement of the Horizon 2020, FP7 before, and Horizon Europe is dependent on feedback from the research field. It's always trial and error. Flat rate can be helpful, simplified cost options can be helpful, but then from the practice there comes an objection. And what we have observed during our audit and our advice to the Commission before Horizon Europe was that there is always a tension between, for instance, a simplification of the calculation and the need for real cost reimbursement. And this tension is extremely important. Another one might be the simplified cost calculation by the Commission and the national audit standards and the national calculation. There's always a tension. And the only way forward is intensify feedback from the research field, and not on a haphazard way in the sense that you make many changes after each other. But in my view, the development of research is as such a research project. You start with trial and error, you get feedback, and then on basis of that you develop improvements. Another aspect which is extremely important is that we have also observed that the effects of certain measures like flat rate or simplified cost options or whatever, they are different from country to country. It is also dependent on what's the national situation, and that's a part of the complexity as well. National contact points may be very helpful in it, in the sense that they centralize more or less, but I think that everybody has to keep in mind feedback is for this system essential, and the Commission should be always open for feedback from the research field.
Thank you very much indeed. And just to remind you that there is a village downstairs. We are in Kanban number 21, and we are waiting for you to ask more questions and to provide us feedback, because this is what we want to do before we launch the new framework program. So, may I go now to Rosa with this question on the evaluation and the non-negotiation principle. So, in the past, the evaluators, they were doing recommendations in the assessment of the proposals, and then the applicants, they had the obligation to adapt their proposal and to take it seriously before we go for the final contract. So the situation now has been changed in the sense that the evaluators, they can still make proposals for modifications, but at the end, based on the new non-negotiation principle, the proposal cannot be changed dramatically. So I see here that there is frustrations from the evaluation community. What are your views on this?
I've been evaluating quite, I wouldn't say long time ago, but in the third, in the fourth, fifth, sixth framework program. And I understand what this colleague is pointing, because you evaluate from the paper, but you have no arguments in any case to validate or to see, the real statement in the proposal that you are evaluating, I think with the two phases, things have changed for better. Because, of course, I understand that in the second phase, you have an interview. Correct me if I am wrong. So this gives you the opportunity to test, to see exactly, how it is like.
Okay, thank you. Indeed, in some proposals, in some calls, we have interviews in the second phase, in others not, but probably something also we reflect to intensify more. Anybody else would like to respond to this question? Yeah.
We discussed before that I think in this decision situation for the elevators, it could be very worthy to be in contact and have a discussion with the proposers, because this is the most fair process. Asking questions that they will be prepared, and that only the researchers has to be there, not the consultants, only the researchers, to make clear what the spirit and what the project of their project is. Because I learned from other evaluators that sometimes you have an extraordinary, very good project, but 10 others you cannot really differ. And based on the paperwork. Therefore, it could be very worthy and very fair to give all the proposers a chance to explain in more detail or to answer questions of the evaluators to have a clearer picture for the decision. I would like to pick up another question, one of the next questions. The question is the deadlines. In Germany, we sometimes have the situation that we have a rolling call, and then you can submit your proposal every 6 months. It's not a fixed deadline. You only have to meet this deadline. It could be the other 6 months or 1 year ago, but it's an open call, and give the proposer the chance to have more time to prepare their proposal. And it functions very well in Germany. There is sometimes no need to have only one deadline for one call. You can structure it in a different way to make it more comfortable, for example, for proposers. And in Germany, in particular in my last directorate, I was in charge for sustainability, energy, and climate change research. We had a lot of calls, 500 million euro a year. And we did it very often, and it was very well accepted by the applicants.
Thank you very much. Indeed, that's a very concrete proposal that we should also consider and take on board. If I'm not mistaken, the EIC is an area where there are a lot of cut-off dates, and there is not a strict deadline. And maybe there are other areas, but indeed it's something that we have to reflect for the next framework program. So maybe I go back to Olivier for this question, which is on the lump sums. Now it disappeared.
I read it. Don't worry.
You read it? Yeah. Okay.
I've read it as well. But
Olivier.
Okay, it is indeed a question. Is it really worth it? Is it really worth it investing ex ante? And are we going to have a significant simplification down the line? Because otherwise it's not needed, not worth it. Well, we believe it, in certain cases it is, but it is, as Alex has said, a question of getting your feedback on which areas, which type of actions, which type of project it is best suited for, and to apply it and to tailor it to this kind of project. This is my short reply. And a slightly longer reply is that I'm convinced that by the wind you would do in administrative staff, not having to follow the bills, this is something that could compensate maybe the few euros that you might not recover in terms of actual costs. So I'm calling on all of you to consider to make this lump sums a win-win project, both for the EU and for the researchers.
Alex.
Yes, I would like to highlight on basis of this thesis that there is also responsibility of the research institutes and universities and researchers themselves, in the sense that they can be on the one hand risk averse and make the systems more complex than is needed. Secondly, it's extremely important that we note that if we talk about simplified cost options, flat rate, etc., in the controls, in the audit, we should not duplicate the need for bureaucracy and administration. In a sense, if it is a lump sum, it is a lump sum. And if a controller or an auditor asks, and can you show me that it is within the conditions, then you complicate it. The same goes for flat rate, etc. Auditors and controllers have to be wise from the beginning in being involved in audit of Horizon 2020. I've always pleaded, please start to apply common sense. And that's sometimes that you miss common sense and that the rules are applied in a very rigid and, in my view, sometimes stupid way.
Okay, thank you. I'll see there are more questions, a lot of questions actually, and since we are talking about lump sums, you allow me to direct the question also to Olivier on other ideas to simplify personnel cost except from lump sums.
Well, that's a difficult issue because the staff costs reflect the diversity of the salary in the member states, and it's a very sensitive issue. But there have been more ambitious approaches as part of Marie Curie, for instance, and with an amount of flat rates or unit costs developed, and I still believe there is room for exploring this kind of avenue, to have a better, a little bit like the model agreement already proposed, weekly, moving from a weekly to monthly average, and to a scale of more being aligned on the national salaries, because at the end of the day, when a member state funds research, he will take into account his salary. So why can't we use this as a proxy for a European-wide salary, taking into account, of course, the diversity of the levels of life within the EU?
Thank you. Alex, would you like to, or Winfried or Rosa, something on this?
No, but the first line here, this is interesting one on EIT, if you don't mind, I can reflect on
EIT.
Because this is an issue which is, I believe, a challenge for the Commission, in the sense that the EIT is applying its own IT interface platform, etc., etc. I've discussed on the kick level with people who were responsible for finance, and they said we are so burdened with bureaucratic needs. Every year we have to present a pile of 1,000 pages, and that's not necessary. Single audit might be very helpful in the sense, or single data is also might be helpful, but I believe that the execution of these programs, there should be uniformity, and I believe that the example which has been set by RTD and Horizon 2020 should be applied all over all agencies in Europe.
The good news is that yesterday we had indeed a meeting with EIT and KICS.
And they are obeying to your needs?
Not yet, not yet. It's the same program, it's the same rules, there's not the same interface, it's not the same model grant agreement, so we are trying to find the ways. It's challenging, it's not easy, because KICS have a particular nature as bodies.
Okay, but from my position, I would like to give a kick to
the KICS.
The EIT and...
But what we were envisaging is indeed a kind of a common data repository, a common interface, reducing the administration. So I cannot say what, but indeed is one of the issues that we are discussing. NCPs, Rosa, you explained what you would like to see from the NCPs, but maybe I would ask you a question in the sense that if out of the list of proposals that you made, what do you think that the European Commission could do more for NCPs? And the same question will go to Winfried.
You know, in the past I've been also an NCP, okay? Looking at the energy program. What the Commission can do, I think, is to have a direct and fluent communication with the NCPs, you know, to keep them informed, as I mentioned before, to know not about changes, whatever, just at the very last time, I would call for a more or a very fluid communication between the NCPs and the Commission.
Yes, I was in charge for different NCPs in my old job, and I think they did a very good job, and there was a very good communication between the NCPs and the European Commission, to be honest. We didn't have reasons to complain. It was really good, and we were able to deliver directly the latest information to the proposers and the applicants. Therefore, we were very happy about it. And I think it's a special situation to have such NCPs, because it's different to other funding programs of the European Union. It's really a system, a regional system, that's perfect, where applicants can be in contact directly with people which are very well experienced and which have a very good access to the people of the European Commission, and therefore I'm very happy about it. In Germany, we try to concentrate them, because they were in different parts, and we said there has to be as well an interaction between the national contact points on a national level, and this was a good decision, because then there was more interaction and more discussion between them, and more knowledge which they can distribute to the people. Therefore, thank you very much for the very good cooperation.
I would like to say that I was not complaining. I was just trying to explain that I would like to keep this figure and even to improve, you know. I think everything in life can be improved.
And we are here for this. Alex.
I would like to draw your attention to another aspect, and that's the regional spread of the results of Horizon 2020. There are countries which are extremely successful, like Germany, like Spain, with strong national contact points. I believe that for the success, the broader European success of Horizon Europe, it's extremely important that in all European countries there are active, adequate national contact points. We are now in an audit on support for SMEs, and then you can observe that in certain countries, SMEs do not address their national contact points or whatever, because they don't trust them, because they are not inadequate. And that's really a danger for the European cooperation. So an effort to improve on the national level the function of national contact points, a network of national contact points, and knowledge sharing is extremely important.
The quality of the NCPs.
Thank you very much. I see somebody from the audience would like to take the floor as well. So it's like this. It's like this.
Thank you very much. What you're saying is certainly true. However, many of us, many colleagues who are preparing proposals have been finding out that there is a large variety in the quality and knowledge of NCPs. And this is true, and many times when you ask a specific question, the answer is not direct, is not exact, is very dubious, and there are problems with it. So while the NCP regulation is a very good one and more effort could be done to improve it, still there are blanks. What people have been suggesting is what we have been doing in the past. I remember 10 years ago, a proposer or two or three of the proposers in the consortium were able to ask a question directly to the project officer. The last 10 years, the Commission has discouraged this very strongly. I have a very specific question, and I cannot ask directly the project officer who knows very well his stuff. He prepared the call, he knows everything, and perhaps in 5-minute conversation over the phone, he would be able to answer something that I would be struggle for days and days to find the correct answer. So what many of us are pleading is to allow proposers to have a direct contact with an officer, even for a short time, but for very specific questions, not to ask the project officer, how can I improve my proposal? I'm not saying that. But if we have something that's very specific, it would be a good idea to have a quick answer with a person who is cognizant exactly of what has been going on and what he's been doing. This is what many of us are asking for. Thank you.
Thank you. And I see another question at the back. Is the same subject?
The same subject, but it's rather common.
Okay. Sorry.
Because I am an RCP, regional contact point for Horizon 2020 and FP7, and I want to underline the need for wide development of our skills. Because, for example, my contact point, my name is Paweł Kaczmarek, I'm from Poznań contact point for Greater Poland region. And we are not only helping scientists and companies to deliver projects in Horizon 2020, we are developing the scientists' skills and capacity themselves, because that's what brings the results, maybe not in the closest call possible, but in a few years' time. We are implanting ourselves in the institutions with the local contact points initiative and training even PhD students in 4 years' time to deliver successful MSCA projects, then first starting grant projects, and etc., etc. It's not only we are the knowledge source for the universities when it comes to Horizon 2020, but also when it comes to creativity, idea generation, networking, design thinking, and like humanist in the broader sense services. So maybe it's the Polish perspective, because we are reforming right now when it comes to capacity growth, which delivers therefore success rates in the proposal writing. But we are doing it, we are not demanded to do it, but we are doing it, at least my contact point. Maybe it will be a good way to support wide skills range of employees like ourselves.
Okay, thank you. May I ask Olivier to reply to the first question? Why an applicant cannot conduct anymore the project officer while preparing a proposal?
Well, obviously for reasons of equality of treatment and absence of conflict of interest and objectivity of the process, but I'm struck by the question, and I think we can organize our services also in a way to direct discussion to you, to our central services, support services, and not to the evaluator. So I think there are ways to get around this.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. And again, the NCPs, if they are trained, if they know very well the program, they can play this role, they can facilitate this. And I have to say that in the new proposal of the Horizon Europe, there is a reinforced support to the NCPs, and in particular to the NCPs coming from the widening countries. We don't know yet the exact measures, but we really want these NCPs to play also a role of an advisory when applicants they are preparing the proposal, so that we ensure that there is a possibility for all the researchers across Europe to have equal opportunities for access to the program. So this is what we have to do, and this is where we can see also how we can accommodate better and in which ways the interactions with the applicants, so that they have been facilitated to prepare the appropriate proposal, a good proposal, and submit a good proposal. Sorry, yes.
We always talk about the NCPs, but we're forgetting the officers in the universities and research centers. Yeah. That there's the first line with the researchers, and I think they need money and resources like the NCPs. They should be treated like NCPs, but first liners. And I think that will improve a lot the management and everything for Horizon Europe.
Thank you. Thank you very much. We don't have a lot of time. There was a very active audience and very active speakers. So, I don't know, there are some more questions there. And may I be biased? May I choose one question and I ask your opinion? And the question is that the European Commission is considering to use a daily rate instead of an hourly rate for the calculation of the personnel cost in Horizon Europe and beyond, I would say. Do you think this is a real simplification measure, or will it create much confusion when it comes to researchers involved in other projects? Olivier?
Well, I would like to reassure that the approach is not to develop niche rules, and when we will be proposing a simplification in which will be supported by the researcher, we want to extend to the whole of the beneficiaries, and this is the approach which very much is behind the extension of the future draft model agreement in the research area to a corporate-wide system. So, but we need to be, of course, you need to be convinced that it is an improvement, and then we can look at the implementation.
Okay, Alex?
Out of the box, I believe it might be a good idea, and you should test it and see whether it works. But out of the box, one of our ideas for simplification was just get rid of all those kind of programs and start with prices. Just a lump sum for a good idea, and it's not necessary to control everything behind the screen.
Okay. Winfried, something about it?
I wish that you continue with this consultation process, because it's
Yes.
necessary to improve it all the time, not only preparing a new framework program, to do it all the time in order to be able to have improvements during the framework program, because we will have 7 years. It's a long time, and therefore there is a need to become better in terms of simplification. And thank you very much for this discussion and the initiative and this stakeholder interaction. Thanks a lot.
Rosa, your last statement.
I am very happy with the comments about to look at the interfaces. I think it is very, very important to come back with checking, how it works and to implement any necessary changes. And another thing that I think we have not mentioned, but I think it's also important to look at the synergy about the different funding instruments in the Commission.
Okay. So, I think we are almost there. I am not going to take any other questions because I would like to try to conclude. Thank you very much for this very, very interesting debate and discussion and questions. We are not finishing with that. As I said, Kanban number 21 is our implementation village. You can come, ask questions, ask clarifications. I'll try to conclude. We don't have the time to have some takeaways at the end, but it's clear that communication, better use of the NCP's network, maybe to consider to enhance these NCP networks with other people that they are dealing in the proposal stage, simplification, lump sums or other simplified cost of funding, corporate approach towards synergies between the different programs. It's very important. There it comes, the corporate model grant agreement, and maybe a unique calculation of the costs occurred, because otherwise we will not be able to audit only once. So it's all around that. Evaluation system, well placed, what we can do more for two-stage evaluation. There was also one question on how we can alleviate the difficulties and the challenges of the two-stage evaluation. Maybe better interactions with the applicants and the experts. That was one of the proposals. Improving the interfaces concerning the participant portal, and many, many, many other suggestions. We still wait for your input in our consultation. Deadline for the consultation, the 4th of October, and join us downstairs in the village. Very welcome. You are very welcome, and to propose, to give proposals, to ask questions. Our colleagues are there waiting for you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for your participation.